Meanwhile, let's turn to the other half a dozen important stories that took place yesterday. The Mick Mulvaney.
It's my favorite story.
This is the quid pro quo, or the other one.
Oh yeah, there's two Mick Mulvaney. The G7 one.
Okay, yeah. I guess we could start with the G7, and one wonders if, I don't know. Here, it's hard to impart to Trump and the administration like some type of strategy, but I think tactics-wise, I think it's fair to say that Trump understands like. It doesn't matter. You can just keep putting stuff out there. And if something's a little bit less controversial, I'd rather have people talking about this than that. And we'll get back to the that. But the this is that Mick Mulvaney went out and did his press, did a press availability. And they don't do many press. I mean, we don't see this anymore, right? There's no more like.
Well, he's a chief of staff, number one.
Right.
So,
but we don't see even like White House press briefings really anymore.
How many days? 200 and something? 300?
And so here's Mick Mulvaney coming out to talk about the fact that the White House did a rigorous search for where to hold the G7 summit. And through their rigor and a series of vetting committees and analyses that they ran, they found that the best location that could exist for the G7 would be in Florida. In fact, at coincidentally, the Trump Doral Hotel.
That have been used by past administrations. There's a long list of the accommodations on site, the ballrooms, bilateral rooms, the number of rooms, the photo ops, the support hotels that are there, the proximity to cities and airports, helicopter landing zones, medical facilities, etc. So we use the same set of criteria that previous administrations have used. We started with a list of about a dozen just on paper. And we sent an advanced team out to actually visit 10 locations in several states. We visited California, Colorado, Florida, Hawaii, Michigan, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Utah. We got that list down to just under 10, and the advanced team went out to visit those. And from there, we got down to 4 finalists that our senior team went out to look at. They looked at, I think it was 1 in Hawaii, 2 in Utah, and then the Mar-a-Lago facility in Florida. And it became apparent at the end of that process that Doral was by far and away the best physical facility for this meeting. In fact, I was talking to one of the advanced teams when they came back, and I said, what was it like? And he said, Mick, you're not going to believe this, but it's almost like they built this facility to host this type of event. If any of you have been there, you know that there's separate buildings with their own rooms, separate and apart from each building, so that one country could have a building, another country could have another. You folks could have your building for the press, and obviously the common areas are going to be perfect for our needs down there. Again, anticipating your questions, how is this not an emoluments?
Right, yeah, that's a good question, actually. I would start with that one. How is this not an emoluments problem? I mean, I wish we had footage of the look on the reporters' faces as he's saying this, and they're all just going like, are you serious?
You can hear them laughing. Did you hear the point where someone
is cracking up?
When this happened, I was at Fox News, ready to go on, and then there was another press conference, and so I'm just Googling, where's the Cora? I wanted to know who owned it, because, you know, he licenses his name out. So I'm thinking, well, maybe does like Russia own it? Does China? Who the hell knows who actually? Turkey, for all we know, could own it. But then I when I was doing it, just in May, there was a report saying that Trump's prized Doral Resort is in steep decline, according to company documents showing his business problems are mounting. How opportunistic.
I mean, I'm surprised he didn't have pictures of like, look at these kids having fun there. It's a family place. And it's basically an infomercial for the hotel. And I meing, do you, I would like to see, I hope someone is FOIAing all those trips that they took to go check out all these different places. We sent people far and wide. We sent people across the country. We went from sea to shining sea to find the best resort in the country. And it turns out to be Donald Trump's resort. Can you
The one
imagine?
that's also in decline.
Yeah. There we go.
Surprise, surprise.
Thank you.
The other thing is, this is a golf resort, and we know Donald Trump loves to golf. But I was just thinking about these meetings, like how many, I know some of them, when they go to Camp David, when they've been at Camp David, which is the history traditionally, they're not recorded meetings, but there is something intimate and odd about having meetings on a golf course. And I was thinking about that the other day, like he spent a third of his presidency on the golf course meeting with people.
Yep. I think it's hard to imagine that they didn't do this as a way of sort of distracting and changing the news cycle. However, despite the fact that it was clear that Mick Mulvaney was out there announcing that after a rigorous search, they were going to hold the G7 at Donald Trump's hotel as a way of turning the page, maybe, or at least getting the news off of the huge disaster that the Turkey and northern Syria, not to mention the impeachment. Mick Mulvaney, apparently, from what I understand, CNN reports that he was not briefed about what to say about the impeachment stuff. And so he was on a slightly different page than the entire legal team of the administration, which has been trying to argue there's no quid pro quo here.
He's the acting chief of staff.
Yes.
Yeah. But to be fair, the legal team is Rudy Giuliani and his 5 detained associates.
Well, to be fair, too, it's also Jay Sekulow, and he, I think, had to do the drive time radio show in Boston. So isn't that where he does it or something like that? But
sounds right.
Yeah. Here is Mick Mulvaney making what we would call probably, I think the technical term is a boo-boo.
Actors. Did he also mention to me in the past the corruption related to the DNC server? Absolutely. No question about that. But that's it. And that's why we held up the money. Now, there was a report.
So the demand for an investigation into the Democrats was part of the reason that he was ordered to withhold funding to Ukraine.
The look back to what happened in 2016 certainly was part of the thing that he was worried about in corruption with that nation. And that is absolutely appropriate.
Withholding the funding.
Yeah, which ultimately then flowed. By the way, there was a report that we were worried that the money wouldn't, if we didn't pay out the money, it would be illegal. Okay, it would be unlawful. That is one of those things that has that little shred of truth in it that makes it look a lot worse than it really is. We were concerned about in our over at OMB about an impoundment, and I know I just put half you folks to bed, but there's the Budget Control Act, Budget Control Impoundment Act of 1974 says that if Congress appropriates money, you have to spend it. Okay, at least that's how it's interpreted by some folks. And we knew that money either had to go out the door by the end of September, or we had to have a really, really good reason not to do it. And that was the legality of the issue.
But to be clear, what you just described is a quid pro quo. It is funding will not flow unless the investigation into the Democratic server happened as well.
We do that all the time with foreign policy. We were holding up money at the same time for what was it? The Northern Triangle countries. We were holding up aid at the Northern Triangle countries so that they would change their policies on immigration. By the way, and this speaks to an important. I'm sorry. This speaks to an important point.
Yeah, their policies on immigration, I mean, arguably, maybe has something to do with sort of U.S. interests. Harder to make the case that asking them to pursue a conspiracy theory that they think will vindicate the president is really in national interest.
Right.
But Mick Mulvaney comes out, says, yeah, it's quid pro quo. We do it all the time. And now he doesn't acknowledge, and nobody asks him in that exchange, as far as I can tell. Well, how come he also brought up Burisma and Biden in that phone call? I mean, we know he did. And it would have been interesting to see if Mick would be that far off the script. However, later in the day, he put out a written statement saying that, no, I didn't mean that. I didn't say there was a quid pro quo.
Take it back, Mick.
He's on the way out, right?
I mean,
Isn't
no.
it happen? Aren't they about to fight? Not him. Like, he's not choosing to be on the way out. Wasn't the rumor last week that he was about to be canned?
No, I don't think so. I think that was Rick Perry.
I know that one.
No,
there's just too many to keep up with, guys. Come
But
on.
I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't cut him loose after this on some. This is a pretty major screw up for those people who want to argue that there was no quid pro quo, to have the acting chief of staff say, "Yeah, no, of course there was."
At this point,
And also on top of that, there's like a thread of truth that it was illegal for us to withhold the money. Like, I mean, there was. Yesterday I did a